Hi, today let us discuss Chapter 8A of the MHADA Act, that is, the tenant ownership scheme. The amendment to the MHADA Act came in the year 1986. It gave the rights to the tenants to become owners of the buildings in which they live. Those buildings which pay the repair cess are called the cessed buildings. Earlier they were 18,000 odd buildings. Now we have about 14,500 to 15,000 such buildings. They are only in the island city. And the tenants of these buildings under Chapter 8A of the MHADA Act are permitted to become the owners of their building if 70% of the tenants get together, pass a resolution that they want to form a cooperative housing society, form a proposed cooperative housing society, pass a resolution that they are willing to pay 100 months rent as compensation to the landlord, and by resolving for that, the government under Chapter 8A will acquire the property from the landlord and hand it over to the Cooperative Housing Society of Tenants. This amendment to the MHADA Act, which was Chapter 8A, was challenged by the landlords. In the High Court, the government and the tenants put together a good fight and we won the case. The case then went to the Supreme Court, first to the 2-judge bench, 3-judge bench, and so on. And presently it is before the 9-judge bench. What are the arguments in this case? The landlords say that their constitutional right to property is being violated by the government and that their rights on the property are sought to be abrogated and their property is taken over and handed over to the Cooperative Society of Tenants. They feel that their fundamental rights are violated and hence they have asked for quashing of Chapter 8A, which means the right to tenant ownership which the law has given the tenant would no longer exist. What is the argument on the tenant side? The argument is very clear. The landlords over a period of years have been making representations to the government that the rent that is paid by the tenants is grossly inadequate. And it is not even enough to pay the property tax. Forget the repairs, forget the profit that the landlord would make out of the rent. So the landlord's contention is that owning a building is a loss-making proposition and hence the Chapter 8A not just deprives them of their fundamental rights but also deprives them of their livelihood, because some of them, according to the petition, survive on the income from the rent. To this, the tenant's argument is very simple and clear. The tenant's argument is that if the landlords are making losses by owning the property, first of all, the tenants dispute the landlord's claim. The tenants say that the landlords have been charging huge amount of pagri, and the government itself on the floor of the legislature has accepted that in the year 1986, more than 50,000 crores were accepted and given as pagdi in black money. When the government is accepting this, the tenant's contention is very clear that this is ill-gotten wealth which the landlord has been keeping for himself. Neither the government gets any benefit out of it, nor are the buildings repaired, and the buildings collapse, resulting in hundreds of deaths every year. So it was the tenants' contention that if the landlords are getting nothing and making losses, we will give the landlords 100 months rent. In the year 1986, if this rent is put, 100 months rent was put in the bank would have given the landlord between 10 and 12% interest. In today's date, age and time, the interest rate of the banks have reduced. But in 1986, they said that a one-time payment of 100 months rent would get the landlord 10% returns every year. He doesn't really have to pay any property tax because this money as compensation is given to him. And he can live happily ever after. And that was the argument, that was the rationale behind 100 months rent. The landlords have not argued that this 100 months is less and it can be increased. Neither have the landlords argued that the government doesn't have a right to acquire the property. The challenge to the government's right to acquire the property comes under MHADA Chapter 8, not Chapter 8A. 8A is the tenant ownership scheme. Under Chapter 8, 103B and all other sections, government can acquire the property from the landlords. The landlords have gone to the High Court and the Supreme Court, and Supreme Court has upheld the landlords, upheld the tenants' contention and the government's contention that the government has right to acquire the properties. So the right to acquisition is not under challenge. The only portion under challenge is Chapter 8A, where the properties of the landlords are sought to be acquired by government by paying 100 months rent. This should be made clear to all the tenants. And any arguments that the tenants group make against this argument is likely to be used by the landlords' lobby to weaken the tenants' argument. The government and the tenants are together in this, and the government is defending the tenant ownership scheme. Hence, I thought that the tenant should be aware of this. So much on the tenant ownership scheme. This is Chandrashekhar Prabhu signing off today and promising you that we shall come with many more such posts to educate the people in general and the residents of Mumbai. Bye for now.